I'm gonna lay it all out for you. I'm not a writer or a storyteller, I'm just a regular guy who got kicked in the gut by life. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Emily for 5 years. We were the perfect couple, or at least that's what I thought. We had our routines, our inside jokes, and a nice little house in the suburbs. You know the deal. But it all started to crumble, and honestly, I didn't even see it coming. It began with the little things. Emily, who used to be so attentive and involved, became distant. She'd spend more time on her phone, texting late into the night. I brushed it off at first, thinking she was just busy with work or chatting with friends. But then the changes became more pronounced. She started dressing differently, more stylishly, I guess. I remember the first time I noticed a new dress that hugged her figure just right. When I asked where she got it, she gave me some excuse about a sale in town. Sure, whatever. I wanted to believe her, but then there were the late nights. She'd say she had to work late. But my gut was telling me something was off. The more I thought about it, the more I started to question everything. I was the overly supportive husband, giving her the benefit of the doubt. I remember one night I made dinner, hoping to make things special, but she came home late, barely acknowledging my effort. Her mind was clearly somewhere else. It hurt. I felt like I was losing her brick by brick. Then, one fateful evening, I came home early from work. I was excited to surprise her with takeout from her favorite place. But as I walked into the house, everything felt wrong. The lights were dim and I could hear laughter coming from the bedroom. My heart raced as I crept closer, and then I paused at the door, hearing a man's voice. It was my tailor, Richard, the same guy who had tailored my suits for the office. I felt sick. I thought I'd been betrayed by a friend. The door was slightly ajar and I pushed it open just a crack. There they were, sprawled on our bed, my wife and my tailor. The scene was all too surreal. They were laughing, sharing some private joke that I wasn't part of. Emily was lying back with that same expression she used to give me when I made her laugh. I felt my heart shatter right then and there. I was frozen, trying to process the reality of what I was seeing. The man I trusted with my suits had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. I stepped back, feeling the world tilt off its axis. I couldn't just stand there like a fool. I stormed in, shouting, "What the hell is going on?" They both jumped up, Emily scrambling to cover herself with the sheets. The look on her face was one of shock and panic. She stammered, "Jake, I can explain." But honestly, I didn't want to hear her excuses. I was livid, my mind racing to comprehend the betrayal. The confrontation was a whirlwind. I yelled and she cried, and Richard, the coward, bolted out of our house, leaving Emily to fend for herself. Her explanations came pouring out like a broken dam, each lie adding fuel to my fire. She claimed it was a one-time thing and that it meant nothing. I couldn't believe it. The woman I loved was right there spinning tailies, trying to save herself, while I stood there feeling like a ghost in my own home. This was my life. I thought I knew who she was. My mind was a battlefield of anger and disbelief. I had always trusted her, and now that trust felt shattered. I spiraled through emotions, anger at her, anger at myself for not seeing it, and a deep sadness that wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I felt betrayed by the universe, like it had pulled a sick joke on me. How could she do this to me? How could I have been so blind? I needed a plan, a way to deal with this chaos. That night as I lay awake, I decided that I wouldn't let her break me. I was done being the victim. I'd show her that I could rise from the ashes of this betrayal, and I'd do it with style. I was going to upgrade my wardrobe, become the best-dressed man in town, and take control of my life again. I wanted to make her see what she lost when she chose to betray me. It was time for revenge, but it was going to be a classy revenge, one that would leave her wondering what the hell she had thrown away. I guess you could say this was when my glow-up began. After that night, I knew I had to take action. I couldn't just sit back and let Emily's betrayal define me. I was done being the guy who stood in the background, always supportive, always understanding. I needed to step up, reclaim my identity, and show her that there was more to me than just the guy she cheated on. So I put my plan into action. The first step was to visit Richard's tailor shop, the place where he had transformed me into a confident man for work. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wanted to get a suit, but more than that, I wanted to show him that he had picked the wrong man to betray not just me, but my entire life. I walked into the shop with a purpose. The moment I stepped inside, I felt a rush of energy course through me. It was as if I was shedding the old me, the one who had been content to let things slide. The tailor, middle-aged man named Frank, looked up from behind the counter and greeted me with a smile. "Jake, good to see you. How can I help today?" He had always been friendly, and despite the circumstances, I decided to keep it that way. No need to let my anger spill out on someone who was just doing their job. "I need a new suit," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. "Something sharp. I want to look my best." Frank nodded, sensing the urgency in my voice, and immediately began showing me fabric swatches and styles. Each option offered seemed to give me a little more confidence, as if I was building a new version of myself right there in that shop. I spent hours picking out the perfect suit, a deep navy blue with sharp lapels, tailored to fit my body like a glove. As Frank took my measurements, I could feel the anticipation building inside me. This was the start of my transformation, and I was ready for it. I left the shop with a renewed sense of purpose, a spring in my step, and the kind of confidence I hadn't felt in a long time. Over the next few weeks, I dove headfirst into my glow-up. I revamped my entire wardrobe, trading in my old casual shirts for crisp button-ups and tailored trousers. I even started hitting the gym more often, pushing myself harder than ever. I felt empowered with each drop of sweat and every new outfit I put on. This was no longer just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my identity. Emily noticed the changes, of course. One evening, as I was getting ready for a night out with friends, she walked into the living room. I was wearing a fitted blazer and I could see her eyes widen. "Wow, Jake, you look different," she said, her voice tinged with surprise, but I could sense something else in her tone. Was it jealousy, regret? I couldn't help but feel a little smug. "Thanks, Em. Just trying to make some changes, you know," I replied, giving her a small smile. I was no longer the man who would let her walk all over me. The confident version of myself was rising to the surface, and I was intrigued to see how she would react. As I stepped out for the night, I realized what I was really after. I wanted her to regret her choices, to realize that she had thrown away someone who could have been the best partner. I wanted her to see me not just as her husband, but as a man who could command respect and admiration. I was going to be the best-dressed man in town, and I wouldn't stop until I accomplished that. I started going out more, meeting new people and making connections. In those nights filled with laughter and camaraderie, I felt a wave of freedom wash over me. I was no longer tied to the emotional shackles Emily had put on me. I met some great friends, and they often commented on my transformation. "Jake, you look incredible, man. What's your secret?" they'd say, and I would just smile, keeping my motivation close to my chest. As I immersed myself in my new life, I began to realize something important. My happiness wasn't dependent on Emily anymore. I was rediscovering myself, the person I had lost in the shadows of our marriage. I was forging a new path, one that was leading me away from the pain and betrayal she had caused. Emily, on the other hand, seemed unfazed by my transformation at first. She would make snide comments about my new social life, throwing a hint of sarcasm into her words. "Out with your new friends again, are we? Must be nice," she'd say, her tone cutting. But each time I would shrug it off, smiling as I prepared for another night out. It was exhilarating to feel the power shift back into my hands, but deep down I knew this was just the beginning. I had to stay focused on my goal. I wanted to confront her about the affair, but not yet. I had to show her the new me first, the man who would not be easily broken. The revenge I sought wasn't just about hurting her. It was about rising above and becoming the person I was always meant to be. While I was out living my best life, one question lingered in the back of my mind. How would she react when she realized that the man she took for granted was gone, replaced by someone who wouldn't settle for anything less than respect and love? I was determined to find out. As the weeks rolled by, the transformation wasn't just about my clothes or my physique. It was about my entire outlook on life. I was no longer the passive guy who accepted being treated poorly. I was a man asserting himself. I was going out with friends, making new acquaintances, and even flirting with women. Nothing serious, of course, just a little fun to remind myself that I was still desirable, that I still had options. Emily was still around, but the dynamic had shifted dramatically. She seemed to be caught off guard by my newfound confidence. Occasionally, she would try to engage with me, asking how my nights out were, but I could tell that her interest was rooted in jealousy as much as curiosity. It was a strange feeling, to have someone who once held so much power over me now feeling a little insecure. One night I came home late from a dinner with friends, wearing the sharpest suit yet, charcoal gray with a slim fit, and a newly acquired watch that glimmered under the kitchen lights. Emily was sitting on the couch, the television flickering softly in the background. She looked up as I entered, a mixture of surprise and something else in her eyes. "You're dressed to the nines, big night?" she asked, forcing a smile. "Just dinner with the guys," I replied, casually shrugging off her question. I could see her curiosity piqued, and it felt good to have that effect on her. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the table, deliberately maintaining a relaxed demeanor. "Did you have fun?" she pressed, her voice laced with a hint of tension. "Yeah, it was great. We talked about work, life, the usual." I was deliberately vague. The less I shared, the more she seemed to squirm. I could practically see her thoughts racing, and I enjoyed the moment. She shifted in her seat, biting her lip. "You're really enjoying yourself these days, aren't you?" "Guess so," I said with a hint of a smile. "Just trying to live my life. That evening, something inside me clicked. I realized that I had spent too long worrying about what Emily thought of me and how she felt. It was time to turn the tables. During the quiet moments when she was lost in her thoughts, I began to plan how I was going to confront her about the affair. I wanted to do it when the time was right, when I could truly show her the consequences of her actions. And then it happened. One day, while I was checking my social media, I saw a post from one of my friends, a photo of us at a weekend brunch, all smiles and laughter. I thought about sharing it, but a more diabolical idea crossed my mind. I decided to post it, tagging everyone who was there, including Emily. I knew this would catch her attention and stir the pot a little. Within minutes, I received notifications of comments and likes. I could feel Emily's eyes boring into me as I sat on the couch, scrolling through the notifications, grinning like a Cheshire cat. After a while, she couldn't hold it in anymore. "Are you going to keep scrolling all night?" she asked, irritation creeping into her voice. "I might," I replied, still pretending to focus on my phone. "Just enjoying the moment." "Why do you care so much what people think?" she shot back. "It's just social media, is it?" I said finally, looking up into her eyes. "Seems like it matters to you too." The silence that followed was thick with tension. I knew she was grappling with her emotions, caught between jealousy and guilt, but I needed to escalate this. I was ready to confront her, to lay everything out on the table. That night I gathered my courage and initiated the conversation. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my tone serious. Her eyes widened slightly and she sensed the shift. "About what?" she asked, trying to sound nonchalant, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. "About us," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I know what happened with Richard." The color drained from her face, and for a moment I thought I could see her heart racing. "What do you mean?" she stammered, feigning innocence. I wasn't going to let her wriggle out of this. "Don't play games with me, Emily. I walked in on you too, remember? I know about the affair." Her defenses kicked in and she quickly launched into a defense mode. "Jake, I can explain. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You think that's what it was? You were in our bed, Em. You and my tailor, laughing and sharing the kind of intimacy that should have only been ours." Tears welled in her eyes, but I was done with the emotional manipulation. I had given her too many chances already. "You broke my trust, and now I need to know how you plan to fix this, because I'm not just going to sit here and pretend everything's fine. I deserve better." The weight of my words hung in the air as I watched her process my anger and disappointment. I could see the turmoil in her eyes, regret, fear, and maybe a hint of realization. But I wasn't interested in her pity. I was here for my own closure, my own path forward. "Jake, please, you have to believe me. I never meant to hurt you," she pleaded, her voice cracking. But I was firm. "It's too late for that, Emily. You made your choice, and now I have to make mine. I'm no longer that guy who sits back and lets you walk all over him. You're not the only one who can change." I could see her processing this shift, realizing that the man she had once taken for granted was no longer the same. I had taken control of my life, and now it was her turn to face the consequences. As I left the room, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. This confrontation had been the catalyst I needed to truly reclaim my life. I was ready to move forward, and I couldn't wait to see where this new path would lead me. The days following our confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions. I had laid my cards on the table, and now it was Emily's turn to react. I expected her to fight for our marriage, to plead for another chance, but oddly enough, things settled into an uneasy silence. It felt surreal, like we were living together but no longer connected. Emily kept trying to engage with me, but her attempts felt hollow. She would make dinner, ask about my day, but there was a distance between us that felt like an unbridgeable chasm. I began to question whether she was genuinely remorseful, or if she was just trying to play the role of the apologetic wife to maintain the facade of our life together. It was exhausting. One night, as I was getting ready for another evening out, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The new suit, the fresh haircut, the confidence. I had transformed into a man I barely recognized. I was no longer the downtrodden husband. I was someone who had rediscovered his worth. And yet, a part of me still felt tied to Emily. It was complicated. As I stepped out for a night on the town, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still waiting for her to show real remorse, to take responsibility for her actions. It was frustrating. I wanted her to realize what she had lost, but I also wanted to move on. So, I decided to keep my distance. I kept living my life, but I was also keeping an eye on Emily, waiting for a sign that she was willing to put in the effort to rebuild what we had. Then one evening, I returned home later than usual after a fantastic night out with friends. I was buzzing with energy, still riding the high of laughter and camaraderie. But as I walked through the door, I noticed something off. The house was quiet. Emily wasn't in the living room or the kitchen. I felt a hint of anxiety creep into my chest. "Emily?" I called out, my voice echoing against the walls. There was no response. I moved towards our bedroom, a sinking feeling settling in my stomach. As I approached the door, I heard a muffled sound. My heart raced as I stepped closer. I pushed the door open, and what I saw froze me in place. Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed, her head in her hands, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. It was a stark contrast to the confident woman I had seen just weeks before. The sight of her so vulnerable softened something inside me. "Jake," she choked out, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm so sorry, I messed up. I never wanted to hurt you." For a moment I was at a crossroads. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to hold her and tell her everything would be okay. But the other part of me remembered the pain, the betrayal, and I couldn't forget it. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain steady. "What changed, Emily?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with a hint of disbelief. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what I did. I don't want to lose you, Jake. I realize now how much you mean to me," she said, her voice trembling. The sincerity in her tone caught me off guard. It almost sounded genuine, but I didn't want to be fooled again. "Is this about guilt?" I asked, needing the clarity that my heart yearned for. "Or have you truly realized what you lost?" I've realized," she said, wiping her tears. "I've been talking to a therapist. I want to work on myself and I want to work on us. I know I have no right to ask this, but I hope we can rebuild what we had." I was taken aback. A therapist? Was this a last-ditch effort to save our marriage? The thought crossed my mind, but I had to be cautious. The hurt was still fresh, and I wasn't ready to dive back into the depths of our relationship without careful consideration. "Emily," I said slowly, "trust isn't something that can be easily rebuilt. I need time to process this, to see if you're truly committed to changing." Her face fell and I could see her disappointment. "I understand. I don't want to lose you, not like this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I stepped back, giving her space. "If you really want to change, then show me. Actions speak louder than words, Emily." With that, I left the room, giving her the time she needed to reflect on her choices. I needed to focus on myself, on my journey of self-discovery and growth. I kept going out, meeting new people and having fun. Each day I felt stronger, and I was beginning to enjoy the single life more than I had anticipated. But despite my resolve, there were moments when I would catch myself thinking about Emily. I wondered if she was truly committed to making things right or if this was just a phase. I didn't want to be her safety net, the fallback when things got tough. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not as a consolation prize. As the days passed, I noticed small things that hinted at her effort. She started cooking meals I loved, sending me sweet texts during the day, and even trying to engage in conversations about our relationship. But was it enough? My heart was still guarded, and I needed to see more than just surface-level change. Then came the pivotal moment. One evening, as I was preparing for another night out, Emily approached me. She had put together a small dinner, complete with candles and my favorite wine. "I wanted to do something special," she said, her cheeks flushed with anticipation. "Can we talk? I really want to show you that I'm serious about this." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to give in and enjoy the moment, but the other part was still wary. I agreed to sit down with her, but I knew I had to keep my guard up. It was time to lay everything out on the table once and for all. I needed to know if she was truly committed to changing, or if this was just a fleeting moment in the wake of her guilt. The dinner was beautiful, filled with laughter and deep conversations, but as the evening wore on, I felt the weight of the conversation lurking just beneath the surface. Finally, as we finished the meal, I knew it was time to confront the elephant in the room. "Emily," I said, my voice steady, "I need to know if you're really committed to changing. This can't just be a phase. I won't go back to being the guy you cheated on." The look in her eyes told me everything. She was sincere, but sincerity alone wouldn't rebuild the trust that had been shattered. I needed to see her actions align with her words. I was ready to move on, but I wanted to do so with clarity. I was beginning to realize that while I had taken steps toward my own transformation, Emily was also on her journey. But the question remained, could we walk this path together, or was it time for me to finally let go? That was the question that hung in the air, waiting to be answered. The next few weeks passed in a haze of uncertainty. Despite Emily's efforts to reconnect, the trust between us still felt tenuous, like a fragile glass sculpture that could shatter with the slightest touch. I could see Emily was genuinely trying, but her past actions loomed over us like a dark cloud, casting shadows on everything we shared. Every dinner we had together, every text exchange, felt like a delicate dance. I wanted to trust her, I truly did, but the nagging doubts lingered in the back of my mind. Each time she mentioned her therapy sessions, part of me wanted to feel relieved, but the other part remained skeptical. Was she actually working on herself, or was this just a performance to keep me from walking away? One evening, I returned home early from work, hoping to surprise Emily with a spontaneous date night. I had picked up her favorite takeout and some wine, and I was genuinely excited to share it with her. As I stepped through the door, I heard her voice on the phone, her tone sounding upbeat and happy. At first, I felt a flicker of warmth in my chest. Maybe she was talking to a friend, sharing laughs. But as I got closer to the living room, I overheard snippets of her conversation that sent chills down my spine. "Yeah, I messed up, but I think he's finally coming around. Yes, I'm working on it. I really want to make it work with him." My heart sank. The realization that she was talking about me with someone else felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't stand there listening anymore. I dropped the takeout bags on the kitchen counter and stormed into the living room, my heart racing with a mix of anger and betrayal. Emily looked up, startled, and quickly ended the call. "Jake, you're home early," she said, trying to sound casual, but I could see the panic in her eyes. "Who were you talking to?" I asked, crossing my arms, my voice steady but laced with tension. "It was just Sarah," she said, her voice defensive. "We were talking about how I'm trying to work things out with you." "Is that what you call it, talking about how you messed up?" I shot back, my frustration bubbling over. "Why do you feel the need to explain yourself to her? Why can't you just talk to me?" "I am talking to you," she insisted, raising her voice in frustration. "I'm trying to make this right, Jake. I want to share my progress with my friends." "Progress? It still feels like you're hiding behind them instead of being honest with me." I snapped. The confrontation felt inevitable, and as much as I wanted to avoid it, I knew it was time to dig deeper into what was going on between us. "Why don't you trust me?" she asked, tears welling in her eyes. Trust is earned, Emily. It's not something you can just demand because you say you're working on it, I said, my voice softening slightly, but my resolve remained. You're the one who broke our relationship. I need to see more than just words. I need to see actions. She dropped her gaze, her shoulders sagging. I know I'm trying, I swear. I don't want to lose you. It's just hard. I'm learning how to be a better person, a better partner, and it feels like I'm on a tightrope every single day. I took a deep breath, trying to process her words. I wanted to believe her. Then show me, I said finally, my voice firm but not unkind. You have to show me that you're serious about changing. You've put us in a lot of pain. I'm still hurt, and I can't just forget that because you say so. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I understand. I'll do better, I promise. I just need a chance. But then came the moment of truth. What if I can't give you that chance? I asked, my heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty. What if I'm done? I want to move on, but I also want to heal. I don't know if I can do that with you still around. The silence in the room was deafening. It felt like both of us were standing on the edge of a cliff, peering into the unknown. I could see the pain in Emily's eyes. I could see her fear of losing me. But I needed to be honest with myself. Was I holding on to this relationship because of love, or was it out of fear of being alone? I don't want to lose you, she whispered, her voice trembling. I love you, Jake. I never meant to hurt you. The sincerity in her words echoed through the room, but I was still grappling with my feelings. I felt a flicker of hope, but there was also a part of me that was tired of being the one left holding the pieces. Emily, I said, my voice softening as I searched her eyes. If we're going to move forward, it's going to take time. It's not just about what you say, it's about what you do. I need space to think. Her face fell, and I could see the realization settle in. I understand, she said quietly. I don't want to push you away. I want to be better for you. Then let me see that, I said, taking a step back. Let's take a break. I need to figure things out for myself. I need to know if I can truly trust you again. That evening was pivotal. We talked until late into the night, but it wasn't the kind of conversation that solved everything. Instead, it was a discussion filled with uncertainty. I could see Emily was fighting to hold on, and while I was still wrestling with my feelings, I had to prioritize my own emotional well-being. Eventually, we agreed to take some time apart. It was a decision that filled me with both relief and anxiety. Part of me felt guilty for wanting space, but the other part recognized this was what I needed. I knew that if I was going to heal and grow, I had to do it independently first. In the days that followed, I embraced the solitude. I threw myself into my hobbies, my work, and my new social life. I explored new interests, reconnected with old friends, and even took a weekend trip on my own. Felt liberating to carve out my own identity again, separate from Emily. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living for myself, not as a reflection of someone else's choices or mistakes. I was finally giving myself the freedom to breathe, to grow, and to heal. But even amidst this newfound independence, I couldn't shake the thought of Emily. Would she change? Would she prove herself worthy of my trust again? As I continued on my journey of self-discovery, I held onto hope. Hope that we might be able to reconcile, but I also braced myself for the possibility that it might not happen. This was a pivotal moment in my life, and as hard as it was, I knew I had to stay true to myself. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face whatever came next, alone or together with Emily. The weeks turned into months as I navigated my new life, and I began to feel like a different person. I had shifted my focus to self-improvement and personal growth. I was finding joy in being independent, rekindling my passions, and surrounding myself with supportive friends who lifted me up instead of dragging me down. Each day, I felt stronger and more assured of who I was away from Emily's shadow. During that time apart, I also kept in touch with Emily. Not constantly, but enough to gauge her progress. It was an awkward dance. She would send me messages about therapy sessions, show me glimpses of her growth, and occasionally ask how I was doing. I could see she was genuinely trying, but each time I spoke to her, the walls I had built around my heart felt like they were still in place. Then came the day I had been dreading and anticipating all at once. Emily asked if we could meet for coffee. My heart raced as I considered the implications. This was our first official meeting since we agreed to take time apart, and the prospect of seeing her again sent a mix of excitement and anxiety coursing through me. As I walked into the cafe, I spotted her sitting at a table in the corner. She looked different. There was a glow about her that I hadn't noticed in a long time. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, and her hair fell softly around her shoulders. But it wasn't just her appearance, it was the aura of confidence she exuded. I hadn't seen that Emily in a while. "Hey," I said, taking my seat across from her. "Hey, Jake," she replied, her voice warm yet tentative. We exchanged a few pleasantries, but the atmosphere was thick with unspoken words. After a moment, she took a deep breath. "Thank you for meeting me." I know taking space was hard, but it gave me a chance to really reflect on everything. She began, her eyes meeting mine with sincerity. "I've been working hard in therapy, and I want you to know that I'm committed to doing better, both for myself and for you." I nodded, my heart swelling with cautious hope. "I can see that," I replied. "You seem different." "I am different," she said, her voice steady. "I realized that I took my happiness and your love for granted. I was so caught up in my own insecurities that I forgot how to be a partner. I want to make things right. I miss you, Jake." Her words resonated with me, and for a flickering moment I felt the walls around my heart begin to crack. But there was still a part of me that remained guarded. "It's going to take more than just words, Emily," I said, my voice firm but gentle. "Trust is built over time, and I need to see consistent change." "I understand," she said, nodding earnestly. "I'm willing to put in the work. I've started volunteering at a local charity, giving back to the community. It helps me put things into perspective, you know. It's about more than just me." I listened intently as she shared her experiences, her growth, and her newfound perspective on life. She spoke passionately about the people she had met and how it had opened her eyes to the impact of her actions. I could see the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had attracted me to her in the first place. But would it be enough? I had to consider my own feelings, my own journey. "Emily, I care about you," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "But I also need to make sure I'm not jumping back into something for the wrong reasons. I've been working hard to rebuild my own life, and I can't lose that again." "I don't want you to," she replied, her expression earnest. "I respect your journey, and I want to be part of it if you'll let me. I'm not expecting everything to go back to normal right away. I just want a chance to prove myself." We talked for what felt like hours, unveiling layers of vulnerability and honesty. It was cathartic, and I could feel the connection between us rekindling slowly. But it was also mixed with caution. I had to remind myself that healing takes time. Eventually, as the sun began setting outside, casting a warm glow through the cafe windows, I realized I was starting to feel something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months: hope. Perhaps we could work toward rebuilding our relationship, but it would take patience and transparency from both of us. "Let's take this slowly," I suggested. "I think it's important for us to continue to grow individually while exploring what we could be together. We owe it to ourselves to be the best versions of us." "I agree," she said, a hint of relief washing over her face. "I want to take it slow. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." As I left the cafe, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. There was still uncertainty ahead, but I was ready to face it, one step at a time. Emily and I had a long road ahead, but this meeting had paved the way for something new. In the end, I learned that healing and growth are not linear paths. They're messy, complicated, and often require taking risks. I had taken control of my life and emerged stronger, and now I was open to exploring the possibility of a future with Emily on my terms. As I walked towards my car, I couldn't help but smile. Regardless of where this journey would lead, I was grateful for the experience. I had learned the importance of self-worth, the power of healing, and the strength that comes from embracing change. Life had thrown me a curveball, but I was ready to play the game again, and this time I was doing it for me.